You've done it. You're moving abroad. You're finally leaving home. Finally, you can meet people who can dream like you. You see, there's so much underneath this decision that you made. So much that you yourself haven't fully understood what is happening. Because in reality, you didn't even think this was possible. It's always been an idea that seemed great to talk to your friends about. So, what have you actually done? You see, humans have always built themselves on the idea of the collective. Take where I was born, for example, South Africa. Everybody knows you. The whole community looks out for each other, and equally, the community gives you a blueprint of what life looks like for you. You know it is expected for you to study medicine and go to church every Sunday before you even know how to ride a bike. These things are never questioned neither, because why should they be? You are one with your community at this point. It doesn't even enter your consciousness that maybe there's been a psychological barrier created by the people around you about the possibilities that are available to you. How many times have you been around your friends and you share something that's been interesting to you and it's just brushed off? Or that one aunt in your family who shares stories about other children who have taken their life seriously, which just really means you should be studying to become an accountant, maybe a doctor. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things. In fact, many people need the structure in order to survive. But when you're aware that you're merely following a system that you yourself don't like, you start to notice things. You see, you've always been an outsider, and often outsiders by definition, in order to discover themselves, will need to leave the community they were born into, even a little, just to truly understand who they are, because the people who raised you have given you an image of who you are before you were even fully conscious of it. By the time you're grown enough to start getting to know yourself, everyone around you has already decided who you are. It's not entirely wrong, but it's just a version of you, mostly constructed by the people around you, not yourself. Your growth as an individual will always outpace your communities, because a community can only change as fast as all the members can change together. So when you leave, you can finally watch the mirrors it once placed upon you fall away. So, you finally packed your bags on a one-way flight to a new city. For the first time, everything seems very clear. The accents seem quite interesting. The food is amazing. You've taken about 500 photos of the new city. The projections of what your family and your community have told you is possible almost feel like they've disappeared. It doesn't feel embarrassing to post on social media anymore. In fact, you probably know someone with a YouTube channel doing some vlogs. This was generally, even for me, the best part of moving to a new city. Your sense of self suddenly feels far larger than you ever thought possible. This can last anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months, depending on how different the beliefs of your new environment are from the ones you grew up with. The wider the gap, the longer the adjustment. Okay, back to the story. It's been a while now. You're acquainting yourself with new people. You might even have a new best friend. You got your little routine going, and you know the time zone difference to call your friends from back home. You don't even check the clock app every 3 minutes. Enter the next stage. The crash. So, the bank account has been set up. You enrolled in classes. You have a designated table with your new friends in the cafeteria. This routine seems to be perfect. Yet, there's a sense of uncomfortability. You generally cannot pinpoint what's going on. You've moved, started this new life, but for the first time, you feel like you're not from here. Not in the way that you felt during the honeymoon phase, where it felt all touristy. You feel foreign. And you have a sense of guilt feeling like this, because after all, you're in a new city, and all your hometown friends and your family have been cheering you on. But this is exactly what's missing. Home. The presence of all your new friends somewhat feels empty, like being seen and not being seen at the same time. For the first time, you feel the absence of being known, and it's a very lonely feeling. You'll feel like you've been taken away from your family and placed in a completely new world and told to discover who you are. It feels quite naked. At home, there'd always been a structure. No matter how rigid it made you feel, you're always a mutual friend away. You could walk somewhere and someone knew your mother. People knew some of what your family was going through. You go from a level of being seen to a complete absence during the crash. This is difficult because no one in your new environment can hold the complexity of what's happening to you. At this stage, no one knows you well enough. Many people turn to substances, whether that's vaping or drinking excessively. This temporarily helps the emptiness one feels during this stage. Others double down on the extended version of themselves they met during the honeymoon phase, which is extremely exhausting to do. Some end up leaving the city completely, and others, well, they end up staying in the environment, which requires accepting that what you've chosen is just difficult. Because during the crash, your collective identity is being stripped away. What your community knew you to be, and the aspirational self you created during the honeymoon phase, is also being stripped away. A word that sums it all up is exhaustion. Everything you'd like to do here feels like a chore. Going to classes, work, answering the phone. At this point, your new friends feel harder to reach. The impulse to withdraw, to be alone for periods of time, is at its highest here, and should probably be honored. There's a term that psychologists developed: first order change and second order change. First order change is when the self does things differently, but remains very much the same. Second order change is a fundamental shift in the structure of the self. The rules, the beliefs, the identity itself, all change, not just the behavior. Second order change is what the Dark Night is. It requires the old self to fully surrender, to fully die, so something within you can be born. And quite frankly, this is what's needed in order for you to survive in this new environment. We're going to call this the false self. The self that was built in response to the demands of the environment back home, your family, your entire community. The self that learned earlier on what it needed to be: safe, loved, and accepted by its people. The false self is real in its own way, but it's the utmost layer of who you are, built for external consumption rather than your own internal truth. It isn't a lie, so much as like an interface, the part of you shaped to operate in the physical world. Going through the Dark Night at its core is recognizing that the false self you built back home is not sufficient to carry you into the next stage of your life. You are releasing the certainty of your old identity, the version of your future the false self was heading towards, the college you were probably going to go to, the friends you are probably going to have there. These are all real things that you're grieving, and many relationships have to be redefined here, or they will be lost because of the person you will become. What is being lost is not who you were, it was who you were told you were, and these things are not the same. Most things that are supposed to help you in the traditional sense don't. Socializing, engaging with the world, it just doesn't help. There is almost a magnetic pull for you to be alone for a while, and many people resist this. They force going out, get in and out of situationships, or solely focus on building their career. This is a stage you'll be in for the longest. There will be a level of baseline happiness once you come out of it. You'll have a completely different viewpoint of how you saw back home, because the filter you had during the honeymoon phase will be gone. There's a love for home that you'll have, and equally an understanding of the community that you grew up in and the beliefs that you had to shed. The self, the one that has gone through all of that, now builds, for the first time, the self chooses who it is in relation to the new environment. And that leads us to the next stage: rebuilding. During the crash and the dark night, there'd always been this underlying feeling of, ugh, I have to wake up and be this person again. In the rebuilding phase, for the first time, there's just silence, a neutral silence that's just there. The day just feels like that, a day. During this stage, there are things so subtle that if you don't pay attention, you'll miss them. The relationship with your room suddenly changes. You start feeling like, this is home. Let me decorate it like that. You start something. Maybe you join the gym or a run club, or you start doing something creative. Not for anything really, just with the genuine interest in doing so. You feel curious, and at the same time, it feels like you're meeting yourself again. This is the most joyous that you'll feel in all the stages. Everything built before the rebuilding phase was built from the outside in. In your hometown, the person you were was built on the requirements, expectations, and the beliefs of the collective working inward to produce a self that was functional within that specific reality. Even in the honeymoon phase, it's the same thing. The rebuilding phase is the first time you feel grounded enough to start interacting with the external world as just you. The rebuilding phase isn't linear. In fact, none of the stages are. It has its own trip-ups. One mistake you might find yourself making is being so relieved that you made it past the dark night that you don't want to do any further work. You should experiment more, instead of just prematurely claiming the first few things that interest you. Another mistake is trying to get validation from other people that you're a completely different person now. It will be easy to slide into a set of performances, but stand firm with the self that you feel you are. Every mistake you make here is a way of staying slightly less visible, slightly less responsible, slightly less fully yourself. The rebuilding phase is you taking deliberate, frequently uncertain movement towards commitments that are yours. Not your community's, not your friends, yours. Taking a walk instead of taking the subway because the weather outside allows it. Journaling more consistently. Reading a book out of pure interest, not because someone told you to. Calling people from back home first, not because you need anything, just because you simply miss them. The rebuilding stage is one that might be missed entirely because it lives in very small acts. And it leads us to the last stage, the gift that's returned to you. There are things that are hard to track, and the return gift is certainly one of them. The ability to perceive two societal structures, individual and collective, isn't noticed or rewarded anywhere, but is something that people can feel on some level. Think of Barack Obama, Trevor Noah, Lupita Nyong'o, Rihanna, Zoran Mamdani. These are just examples that can be seen clearly. Growing up in a collective focused world and moving into an individually focused one, the ability to carry both is evident in these people. In its purest form, psychologists call this double consciousness. The ability to see both places you lived in as exactly that. Two separate systems, each with its own logic. They see what each produces in people and what each suppresses in people. This is the return gift. You no longer mistake the world you're in for the whole of reality. You see it for what it is. One system among many possible ones. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You understand people deeply, and you carry the personal freedom and the individual authority of the individual world. But you also carry something the individual world quietly lost. The instinct towards collective bonding, towards community, towards looking out for one another. You encounter many people like this, and by this stage, you hold this too. These are the people a long individualistic world quietly needs. Not to abandon the self, but to remember what it cost to lose the collective entirely. The world needs people like this, and you are one of them.